He hugged me at the gate and whispered, "Go now. Run while you still can." I believed him. I ran with a broken heart. But when I reached the other side, they were already waiting for me. He didn't want to free me. He just wanted to see how far I'd go before destroying me. If you've ever trusted someone who hurt you when you needed them most, leave a comment with a broken heart emoji. Your story matters. You are not alone. This story is based on real events. Names have been changed to protect identities. The content is emotional, social, and reflective in nature. I used to think love was something that hurt, that a shove after an "I love you" was just part of the package, that his silence in front of others and his screams when we were alone were my fault. My name is Isabela. I'm from southern Mexico. And for many years, I was a shadow in my own home. The morning light, which timidly seeped through the window cracks, rarely reached the corner where I huddled, trying to be invisible. My body, once vibrant and full of dreams, seemed to shrink each day, wilting under the weight of his words. Every movement I made was calculated, every laugh suppressed. I'd watch myself in the mirror and see a stranger with watery eyes and a forced smile that didn't reach them. The smell of frying tortillas in the kitchen, once a comforting aroma, now brought a subtle nausea mixed with the dread of his return. He told me no one would want me, that I wouldn't know how to survive alone, that I was weak, naive, incapable of tying my own shoes without him, and that if I ever tried to run, he'd find me. He'd find me and bring me back for my own good, with a chilling calmness that froze the blood in my veins. And I believed him. I believed him because his voice was the only one I heard, the only one that seemed to matter, because every time I tried to leave, he cried. Tears would stream down his face. He'd fall to his knees, his voice choked with false despair. He said he'd change. He made promises with tear-filled eyes and a mouth full of lies. He promised a new life, a bright future, a love he could only give me if I stayed. I clung to those promises like a thread of hope in an abyss. I was trapped, not by chains, but by words that coiled around my soul, slowly suffocating it by fear. The fear of the unknown was less than the fear of him, but it added to the fear that he was right about me. And by a dream, I insisted on not giving up, that he would be different. The dream that at some point he'd remember the man I fell in love with at the beginning, before the darkness settled in. I remembered the first few months, the tender gestures, the late-night conversations, the future we envisioned together. But that memory was increasingly distant, a faint echo in an empty room. But he wasn't. Everything changed the night he broke my phone. It wasn't the first time something had broken in the house, but it was the first time he'd destroyed something that was solely mine, my only window to the outside world. The shattering sound of the device on the floor echoed in my ears, and then came the silence, heavy, suffocating. Afterward, he knelt, his face contorted in a mask of remorse, begging for forgiveness. The words, "I'm so sorry," came from his mouth, but his eyes, cold and calculating, told another story. It was at that instant that something broke inside me. Not the device, but the last shred of hope. The last excuse I made to justify his cruelty. The last rope that held me there, tied to a life of subservience and pain. The next morning, I went to the market. The empty bag swayed beside me as I walked through the dusty village streets. Each step was a decision, a silent break with the past. I took only the shopping bag and came back with a plan to escape to the United States, to start over, to breathe without asking permission, without looking back, without the weight of his judgment, without the fear he had instilled in every cell of my body. The idea was a breath of fresh air in my lungs, a flame that, though small, propelled me forward. I told a childhood friend. She, with a low voice and worried eyes, knew someone who crossed people across the border. She gave me the contact, the cost, and the fear that surrounded it all. I felt a knot in my throat, but the decision was made. I sold everything I could in secret, exchanging my few possessions for crumpled coins. Clothes, some family jewelry, objects of little material value but great sentimental weight. Each sale was a step towards freedom, a cut with the past. I hitched rides with strangers, traveling 3 states without looking back, my eyes fixed on the horizon, on the promise of an uncertain future, but one that was mine. The bus was old and noisy, the seat hard, but every mile took me further from the invisible prison I lived in. I could smell freedom, even though it was still far away. And then, on the day of departure, I received a message from him. The screen of my phone, now an old borrowed device, glowed with the words that froze me. If you think you'll be happy running away, go. I won't stop you. I was paralyzed. My breath caught in my throat. It seemed like a relief. It seemed like freedom. A voice in my head screamed, "It's a trap." But another, desperate for any sign of peace, whispered, "He's changed." I felt a warmth rising through my body, a mix of hope and dread. But today, I know, it was just him opening the trap, the perfect bait to bring me down at my most vulnerable moment. Have you ever been in a relationship that felt like a prison disguised as love? Share in the comments. Your voice can help someone find their own way out. The truck swayed, as if trying to shake me back to reality, each jolt a harsh reminder of the journey that had begun. The thin air inside the truck bed was thick, laden with the smell of sweat, dirt, and a silent fear. There were 23 of us in there, squeezed together shoulder to shoulder. Men, women, a mother with a newborn baby who whimpered softly, a fragile sound amidst the roar of the engine. Each with their silence, their untold story, their eyes fixed on an invisible point in the future. And I, with my fear hidden deep in my throat, a tight knot that kept me from breathing deeply. My muscles were tense, my skin bristled despite the stuffy heat, and every fiber of my being screamed for me to stop, to go back. I closed my eyes and repeated to myself, the words echoing in my mind like a mantra. It's now or never. The pain of doubt was less than the pain of staying, less than the pain of being a shadow, of suffocating my own dreams. The life I left behind, the invisible cage he had built, was more terrifying than any danger I might face on the road. And though my body trembled, each beat of my heart an anxious drum in my chest, for the first time my mind said, go. A sense of urgency, almost a vertigo, propelled me forward. It was a strange certainty, born of desperation, but one that gave me a strength I didn't know I had. The truck stopped abruptly, and the doors of the truck bed opened, revealing the darkness of the night. The air that entered was freezing, laden with the smell of dry earth and the promise of danger. "Quick, get out!" The coyote's voice was a hoarse whisper, but the urgency was clear. The night in the desert is different. The sky seems larger, a dark velvet dotted with indifferent stars, and the ground more hostile, an endless expanse of sand and thorny bushes. The coyotes, shadowy figures with rough voices, told us not to make a sound. One sound, and the border patrol would get us, or worse, the cartel men. The threat hung in the air, as palpable as the dust we kicked up with every step. The cold night penetrated my thin clothes, raising the hairs on my arms. The wind howled, a lament that seemed to carry the prayers of all who had tried and failed. My bare feet felt the uneven texture of the ground, every stone, every dry branch. I had to run with my face to the ground, bending under the weight of my backpack and my fear. To hold back tears when thorns tore at my leg, a sharp pain that made me bite my lip until I tasted blood. To swallow the nausea when a man beside me fainted from thirst, his skin pale under the faint moonlight. Despair was a wave that threatened to engulf me at every instant, but I clung to the promise of a new life. I imagined Anna's face, my friend, waiting for me on the other side with a warm plate of food and a hug. Her image was a mental oasis in the midst of that desert of trials. But what hurt me most was the weight of doubt. Was he letting me go, or watching me from afar? Had his message been a true goodbye, or just a cruel distraction? I forced myself to push these thoughts away, to focus on the next step, the next breath. The image of his face, sometimes crying, sometimes smiling, with a hint of malice, mingled with exhaustion and thirst. The group moved for hours, traversing the darkness, following the coyotes like silent shadows. My feet ached with every step. My mouth was dry, my body cried out for rest. Suddenly, the figure in front of me stumbled and fell. A muffled cry escaped his mouth, and the coyote guiding us cursed under his breath. He roughly pulled the man up, without asking if he was all right. A chill ran down my spine. We were on our own. After what seemed like an eternity, the air changed. I smelled water, and the sound of a distant current began to echo. Finally, 3 days later, we reached the canal. The last part, the sight of the dark water reflecting the few stars, was both a relief and a new terror. The guide's words were clear, uttered with chilling coldness. You cross and run to that bush. If you stay, you're caught. If you go back, you're caught again or worse. I entered the water with my backpack on my head, my most precious belongings, and the little money I had left. My feet sinking into the muddy bottom of the river, the cold water rising up my legs, making me shiver. My breathing quickened, each inhale an effort, and my heart pounding as if it wanted to escape my chest, beating faster than life itself. The current was strong, pulling me down, threatening to drag me away, but my desire to escape it all was stronger. I paddled with my arms, my muscles burning, feeling the force of the water against my exhausted body. I saw the lights on the other side, promises of a new beginning. With each stroke, I clung to the idea of freedom, of being able to walk down a street without looking over my shoulder, of sleeping without the fear of being woken by screams. I didn't know what awaited me, but uncertainty was preferable to the certainty of the pain I left behind. When I reached the other side, trembling, wet, exhausted, my legs felt like jelly, my whole body aching. A uniformed man pointed a powerful flashlight at my face, blinding me for a moment, and then another, and two more. The light cut through the darkness, revealing other officers approaching. I could hear their heavy footsteps on the damp grass, the sound of walkie-talkies, the metallic glint of handcuffs. Panic surged in my throat, suffocating me. "Are you Isabela?" The voice was deep, emotionless. The air seemed to thin around me. How did they know my name? The question echoed in my mind, the words mixing with the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. I didn't resist. I didn't fight. My body was paralyzed, my mind in a whirlwind. I just closed my eyes and understood. The truth, cruel and cold, hit me like a punch to the stomach. He had let me run, but he had already reported me. The trap I feared, the liberation he promised, it was all part of his plan. He didn't want to free me. He just wanted to break me, to show me I couldn't make it alone, that I'd come crawling back to him, confirming his narrative that I was incapable. The hug at the gate, the words of encouragement, it was all a cruel farce. The pain of the revelation was deeper than any physical injury. It was the betrayal, the last and deepest of all his cruelties. If you've ever trusted someone who said, "I love you," while delivering you to pain, comment with, "I know how that feels." More people feel what you're feeling right now. The cell was cold, the air thick, heavy, smelling of damp cement and a strange mix of disinfectant and despair. The walls sweated, and I could feel the dampness clinging to my wet clothes. The concrete floor was icy beneath my bare feet. There were no windows, just a small barred opening high up, through which a sliver of daylight tried to enter, mostly unsuccessfully. The faint sound of distant voices, keys clinking, and heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors, creating a symphony of oppression. I huddled in a corner, feeling the sting of the wounds on my legs, the extreme fatigue that weighed on my body. But strangely, there, I slept. Not because it was comfortable, but because, for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid he'd break down the door in a fit of rage, or that he'd scream my name drunkenly at 3 a.m, demanding an answer I couldn't give, or that he'd rifle through my things, calling me ungrateful for daring to think of freedom. The silence within me was deeper than the silence of the surroundings. It was the absence of that constant fear that gnawed at me, that kept me on edge, that shaped my every step. Sleep came, heavy and restorative, as if my exhausted body and mind finally allowed themselves a break. The woman in the cell next to me, her face marked by the journey and the days of waiting, asked me in halting Spanish, almost a whisper, "Do you have anyone coming for you?" I laughed softly, a humorless laugh, but with a touch of liberation. The irony of the question hit me hard, and I replied, "Not anymore, but perhaps, finally I have myself." The phrase, spoken in a low voice, seemed to reverberate in the coldness of the cell, gaining a strength that surprised me. It was a newly discovered truth, a sprout of hope in the midst of the desert. Her voice, rough and tired, brought me back to reality. It's a long way back. But for me, the way back was different now. It wasn't a return, but a departure. It was 4 days until they took me back. 4 days of uncertainty, of cold food and repeated questions, of tired faces and indifferent voices. On the way there, I trembled with fear, my heart tight with anxiety and the promise of an uncertain future. Every minute was an eternity of apprehension. On the way back, I just looked out the window of the deportation bus, trying to see what was left of me. The scenery passed quickly, the trees, the simple houses, the mountains in the distance. I saw the landscape that was familiar to me, but I felt that something within me had irremediably changed. I was no longer the same Isabela who had boarded that truck, full of fear and naive hope. His betrayal, however painful it had been, had given me a harsh dose of reality. My eyes no longer saw the world through the filter of expectation, but through the harshness of truth. When I got off the deportation bus, the strong midday sun blinded me for a moment. The smell of hot earth and dust filled my nostrils. He was already waiting for me. There, standing with the same superior pose as always, with the same look, controlling, confident, pitying. A look that said, "I told you so," without a single word. He walked towards me, slow and deliberate, like a predator approaching its prey. His clothes were immaculate, his hair combed, contrasting with my exhausted and dirty appearance. He said, his voice deep and a smirk on his lips, "I knew you wouldn't make it. I told you, Isabela, you're nothing without me." The words were the same as always, designed to make me shrink, to diminish me. But I looked at him, and for the first time, I felt no anger, no fear, no desire to return to the life he represented. I felt only pity. A deep, almost overwhelming pity for such a small, empty man who needed to destroy others to feel big. His eyes, once so menacing, now seemed empty, incapable of seeing the person I was becoming. And at that moment I knew he no longer had me. The invisible prison had crumbled. Deportation, ironically, had been my liberation. The shock of the final rejection, the act of betrayal that sealed my fate, was what allowed me to break free. I was no longer his shadow. I was Isabela, whole and free, with scars that told a story, but that no longer defined me. That turning point, as painful as it was necessary, gave me the clarity that I didn't need an imposed destiny, but one that I could build myself. That moment was not a failure, but rather the beginning of a new journey. If you also broke free from someone who thought they could control you forever, leave a comment saying, "Enough." Your scream echoes further than you imagine. Starting from scratch never felt so light. The weight of that old life, that prison love, had been ripped from me, and I felt a lightness I never imagined possible. I rented a simple room in a distant city, a small village where no one knew me, where the past couldn't reach me. The walls were peeling brick, the mattress thin, but every night I slept a deep, dreamless sleep, a peaceful sleep I hadn't experienced in a long time. The smell of mold and dampness from the walls was a perfume of freedom. I found work selling empanadas at the bus terminal. I'd wake up before sunrise, smelling the sweet aroma of the dough and the spicy scent of the filling. My hands, once trembling with fear, now moved with purpose, shaping the dough, frying the golden delights I offered to travelers. I saw new faces every day, heard different accents, and each interaction was a small victory. The money I earned, however little, was mine, earned with my own effort, and that gave me a dignity his money never did. And every night, I'd write down dreams in an old notebook with a worn cover and yellowed pages, small dreams, but mine, to buy a bicycle, to feel freer, to finish the studies I had abandoned, to laugh without looking over my shoulder, without the fear of being reprimanded. I no longer needed a passport to feel free. True freedom wasn't in crossing a physical border, but in breaking the internal barriers he had built in my mind. I needed courage to choose myself every single day, to put myself first, to listen to my own voice, to trust my own instincts. Every empanada I sold, every smile I gave a customer, was a brick in the construction of my new life. I started cooking for myself, savoring each meal with a gratitude that hadn't existed before. I bought a pair of colorful earrings, a personal item that was solely mine, a small act of rebellion against the lack of color he had imposed on my life. I wrote letters to myself in the notebook, reaffirming my strength, my achievements, my new dreams, small rituals of emotional recovery, silent and profound. One day, while counting change, I saw the notification on my phone. He tried to call me. His name appeared on the screen, and for an instant, a shiver ran down my spine. The old Isabela, the imprisoned Isabela, would have answered, would have justified herself, blamed herself. But the new Isabela, the free Isabela, simply blocked the number without hesitation. The relief I felt was immediate, a deep breath of fresh air. The next day, a message arrived from an unknown number. "Are you going to try again? I can help you." The message was short, but the tone was unmistakable. It was him. I took a deep breath. I deleted the message without replying. And I wrote in my notebook, with a pen I had bought myself, in firm, determined handwriting, "Never again down the same path, never again through the same pain." It was a promise to myself, etched with the ink of my new freedom. Today, when someone asks me what made me go back, I answer with a smile, my eyes shining with a new light. I didn't go back. I truly left. Because sometimes being deported is just the push you needed to break free from a destiny that was never yours. A destiny imposed, suffocating, that stole your voice, your identity, your very existence. The pain of the journey and the betrayal, however profound, revealed the strength I had hidden, the ability to rise from the ashes. You don't have to wait to be emotionally deported to leave a place that's slowly killing you. If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs courage today. Sometimes, silence is the most honest answer, and the echo is all that remains for us not to forget.